welcome to this week's episode of the Dublin to Denver podcast with me, Colum Cronin, and we are on the verge of spring, and suffice to say, the Broncos are in a better position than they have been in quite some time. Probably going all the way back uh, to the season that we won Super Bowl 50. That I am not saying we're winning the Super Bowl this year, though I expect us to be competitive. But ever since then, there have been some sort of lingering questions, mainly around QB. And then I suppose last year, there were there were a lot of young talent, but we were still definitely missing weapons. I think there still might be one or two, uh, you know, um, holes that we need to fill. But with the addition of JK, or with the addition of Jaylen Waddle, we are certainly better placed to join me in talking about the Denver Broncos, who now have serious expectations placed upon their shoulders. I am joined, as always, by my friend, colleague, and co-host Stuart. Stuart, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Colin. I didn't expect to have to dig my green parka coat out of the wardrobe. I thought I'd put it away for the next 6 months, but no, it had to be reintroduced because it's bleeding freezing in Dublin today for some bizarre reason. When you were talking there in the intro, Colin, I think we are in the best position since Super Bowl 50. And as you said last year, we had some question marks around running back, tight end, and inside linebacker, which are exactly the same questions that we have around the team heading into this season. They're slightly different questions, but they're questions nonetheless. So, but I do think that, as you say, I think most Broncos fans expect us to go on a deep run. But when it gets to playoff football, you can never really tell. You need things to bow your way. Just as a complete aside, Colin, the basketball team my son plays for, they won their league. The men's team, sorry, not my son's team. They didn't win their league, but the men's team, they won their league. They acquired home field advantage. They played a team that they put to the sword quite comfortably in the first round of the playoffs, and in an almost copycat fashion to the way the Broncos lost to Joe Flacco's Ravens. I watched it unfold. I was kind of going, if only there was another fan that was watching this game had seen that Broncos loss, we'd be able to share, because we watched all the season's worth of hard work go down in flames, albeit in an absolutely magnificent game. But the team of the Dublin Lions, and they now need to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch. So I was reminded of that. But as you said, we are certainly in a position now where we're counting down the days until meaningful football comes back. And look, just to at the risk of repeating myself and ourselves, Colin, the off season takes on such a different sheen when you have a quarterback in situ. It really is night and day, and in some ways you almost kind of feel sorry for franchises that are sort of plug and play stuff, and like you saw yesterday where I'm not sure who is the Falcons GM, but it was like Michael Penix and Tua Tagovailoa are gonna duke it out to see who wins the starting quarterback role, and you're going, oh God, you cannot help but feel sorry for the Falcons. It's not the worst QB room in the world. You consider some of the things that we put out over the years, but it's not a great space for any kind of a franchise to be in. You don't mind, say, the likes of the Steelers, because they've had decades of success. They can use a year or two in the desert, but as I said, it really is a completely different perspective when you have a quarterback in place. So God bless Bo Nix, and God bless Bo Nix's ankle, and let's hope that it makes a full recovery, because we do not want to go back to those dark days of even 2 or 3 years ago. So as I said, yeah, it just is. Look, it's a great place to be in, but as you said, expectations, Colin, and it's interesting. Like you've seen, I think the Jaylen Waddle trade has put the Broncos back up in amongst the the conversation for certainly preseason favorites to win the Super Bowl. It was interesting because I think the Broncos' inertia when it came to free agents had sort of moved us down a little bit in those ridiculous preseason rankings, but we're certainly back up towards the top of them again, which I think really does show that the addition of one superstar can really move the needle. So and he did restructure his contract yesterday, Colm. So who knows? Maybe there's another move in the offing. I'm not convinced that there is, but I'm not sure the intricacies of it. But I think we've moved his base salary to some kind of a signing bonus, whatever. We've got more cap space now than we did a couple of days ago. So maybe George is dealing. Maybe there's something coming. Maybe he's got something planned, or maybe he's going to wait till after the draft to pick up some of those, or not dissimilar to the way we got John Franklin Morris from the Jets for daylight robbery. So there could be something like that. So we are keeping a bit of space. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, and of course there will be some contracts to renew next year, which will have to be figured out. I think the one of the big questions will be around, maybe that's where we'll go first, Rick, because there will be a question around whether the Broncos are going to trade a cornerback, and I think there will be a question around will the Broncos trade a wide receiver. And I think the quarterback comes from the fact that they picked a luxury pick last year, and Barron struggled to find the field. But you have J-Mac and you have Riley Moss, who are essentially in contract years, and you've got Barron there. So the question is, do they look to move one of those guys on and get something for them? I think Moss would potentially be the one that they may look to move. You would think, or given the way defense fluctuates far more wildly than offense usually, and the defense has been solid for the last 2 years, do you keep those pieces in place and you accept that if Riley Moss goes somewhere next year, you may get a compensatory pick? To me, I may probably potentially lean that way, because I don't think you're going to get a huge amount anyway. I mean, unless, look, if there's a team crazy enough to do a massive deal. Now, it isn't going to be, I don't think I'm saying that we're going to get a first like we did for Bradley Chubb. But if a team is willing to give up a ridiculous pick for a player, I think, you could definitely consider that. But given injuries, given where the Broncos are, given the window is there and they're not paying Bo Nix big money at the moment, why not have that insurance, which is something we didn't have at running back last year, that cost us big time. So that would be my feeling on the cornerback room. I'm going to give the floor to you to ask you your thoughts on that, and then maybe I'll allow you to lead off on the wide receiver discussion and whether you would be willing to do something there.
Well, I think, Colum, we've had 2 years of elite defense in the main. There's been a couple of wobbles here and there, but you'd have to say that the defense has been outstanding for two full years. But the defense has lost some pieces, and they've lost some significant pieces, particularly Jonathan Franklin Myers, who I was just talking about a minute ago. And I'm still not convinced that we didn't give up too soon on Drake Greenlaw. So there's reason to think that the defense may not actually be quite as good as it was last year. And I think Jonathan Franklin Myers is going to be a significant loss. I'm actually surprised that we haven't brought in Jordan from New Orleans for his leadership and for his ability to get after the quarterback, even though he's 35. Because I think that is somebody that could probably be added to the room and wouldn't cost a huge amount if he wanted one last sort of chase for a ring. Now, he's still out there to the best of my knowledge, and that's something that can happen. But I'm surprised that given the amount of New Orleans Saints that seem to have just sort of taken over Dove Valley, I'm surprised that he hasn't come in. I'm also kind of surprised that Taysom Hill hasn't joined the Denver Broncos column. I thought that was going to happen pretty quickly after he was released, but maybe age and maybe his diminishing returns has sort of caught up with him. But so I mean I am of the opinion that I wouldn't trade any of the cornerbacks just yet. I certainly wouldn't trade J-Mac because I think he's a sensational slot corner. And I don't know if today Barn has shown anywhere near enough to warrant getting rid of a known commodity in Riley Moss for him. I mean, I don't think we have seen enough to know that he's going to be able to step right in. Chris Abrams-Drain is a decent sort of depth piece, but I'm not sure he's much more than that. So you know, I'd be of the opinion that I think we should leave a strength. Because I don't know, our team's going to give up a third rounder for Riley Moss. They're not going to give up a first. They're not going to give up a second. You know, and I think, what are you going to get for a third? Who are you going to get in the third round this year that's going to add a significant sort of play to this defense? Because I think we need to keep the defense as strong as we possibly can. So I wouldn't be a massive fan of trading any of those pieces just yet. I think you need to see, and I think we will see more of Barron, just to find out exactly what we have in him. And I'm not entirely sure that Riley Moss will be on the team this time next year. Maybe Barron will have taken his place, but we'll need to see it on the field, Colum. I think just because he's a first round pick, and I look, Jaylen Barron's not a bust. I mean, we've seen enough first round busts in Denver.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, but I mean, he's not. But like, I don't think he's like. I think he's going to be a good NFL cornerback or defensive back. I don't know how good he's going to be, and I don't know if he's going to justify his draft position. But I think he can be a useful player for us. So I mean, but I think we'll have a better idea of this. Like, if we don't have a better idea this time next year, then I think you are beginning to kind of go, that what on earth was that pick about? But I do think, in the same way Sean Payton is a kind of a stubborn old goat, and that's one of the reasons why we love him. I think George Payton would be low to give up on Jayden Barron, because I think, he's somebody who believes in his draft picks, as we've seen. And I think they'll give Barron every opportunity to win that starting position. So I don't think anything's going to happen soon in regards to cornerback. It could happen, after the draft. It could happen during sort of training camp, something like that. Who knows? But I would leave it as it is for now. And as I said, I would not. I think if you're telling me that we have to ship one of them and keep the other between J-Mac and Riley Moss, I'm keeping J-Mac, because I do think slot corners are very, very important in the NFL at the moment. And I don't think Jayden Barron showed anywhere near enough in the slot last year when he played. So I think J-Mac is a guy who I'd be absolutely hanging on to. So in that way, then you kind of sort of segue over to wide receiver column. And there has been it's been a bit of noise over the last week or two. Obviously, Waddle coming in does shake up the wide receiver room. It's been very interesting, Colin, and this is, maybe the last time. No, it's not going to be the last time we talk about this stuff. It's been interesting to see the usual talking heads who were pontificating at length about how the Broncos, and by extension Broncos fans, feel very strongly about their wide receiver room, then completely jettison that opinion once Waddle's brought in and go, well, of course these guys now are open to being traded. I just want people to remember who was on the field for the Broncos in the game against the Bills in the divisional round. We had little Jordan Humphrey, we had Marvin Mims, and we had Courtland Sutton, because injuries do strike, Colin. So at the moment, we've got 5 wide receivers. We've got Courtland Sutton, who has been a brilliant player for the Broncos, but he's not getting any younger. We've got Waddle, obviously. We've got Troy Franklin, we've got Marvin Mims, and we've got Pat Bryant. Now, I like Pat Bryant a lot, Colin, and he really grew on me as the season went. I thought he showed huge potential. Unfortunately, Colin, Pat Bryant has proven to be brittle in the NFL up to this point. He's missed games. Now, it's been unfortunate. It's been concussion related. But, he wasn't available in key games. So I can see why people are talking about potentially trading away somebody like that. But I don't think you can trade Mims. I think he brings too much to the table. I think he's also an all-pro returner, and deservedly so. And I think you've seen Mims being underutilized in the last 2 seasons. And then when it really came down to the meaningful football column, towards the end of the season and into the playoffs, then you saw Mims really shine. Now I'm sure the argument could be made that, well, Jaylen Waddle is going to take his snaps, but I don't know. I don't know. And I think, in fairness, Colin, Troy Franklin, if you said it this time last year, you say, yeah, well, then, try and get what you can get for Troy Franklin. I think Troy Franklin, I think he's been good. He's not Jaylen Waddle good, but he's still a good NFL wide receiver, Colin. So I don't know. It's a tricky one. So, and it kind of depends on what you're going to get. But again, what are you going to get for Troy Franklin? A fourth rounder, maybe. I mean, is that really going to sort of shift the needle? Whereas you look at Troy Franklin, you kind of go, we've seen market improvement from him up to this point. I mean, maybe if there's a player trade, maybe if it's somebody that we need, maybe if it's a tight end who actually is a tight end, in more than name only, it might be something that might be interesting. Or maybe if it's an inside linebacker, I don't know, maybe if it's a running back that's, more than 215 pounds. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of a conundrum because I think, look, we're on the record, Colin. We are deeply concerned about the running back room for the second year in a row. So I don't know, maybe if that's something that can help fix that. But I still think, like, the Broncos are in a Super Bowl window, Colin. I mean, I know it's easy to say that kind of stuff, but I think we genuinely are. So I think you probably should sort of err on the side of keeping as many of those pieces in place as you can, unless somebody comes in and blows you away. And I don't think they're going to do that for either Troy Franklin or Marvin Mims. And they're not going to give up on Pat Bryant this early because he's a recent draft pick. So I don't expect just to do anything. If history teaches us anything about this podcast of the Denver Broncos, then Troy Franklin will be traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tomorrow for a fourth round pick. But no, I probably wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't for the cornerbacks column, and I'd have to really think long and hard about it for wide receiver.
I would tend to agree with you, Stuart, in that unless you got an offer, I'd be more open to maybe trading Troy Franklin than some. Though it is the caveat, I mean, around Pat Bryant's health. 2 concussions in the space of a month. If he and touch wood, he won't, but if he was to get another concussion early on next season, that could be a real issue for him, most importantly, right? Because your brain getting knocked about is serious. It's real issue. And secondary to that, obviously, is what that would mean for the Broncos. So I think insurance, and I mean, the game is going, and I think this is where Florio is correct. We're going to an 18-game season. And I think the nonsense that players will only play 17 games, that is not going to happen. We are going to an 18-game season sooner rather than later. There is a reason that the Super Bowl in 2028 doesn't have a date as yet, and I would not be surprised if Florio is correct and on the 18-game season, and you see an 18-game season as soon as the 2027 season. I really wouldn't be surprised on that. But it's a physical game already, so I think having some insurance is important. However, Stuart, while we may have concerns about the running back room and the tight end room,
I don't like the tone of your voice here, Colin. This isn't going to make me happy now, is it?
Somebody who does not have any concerns is JK Dobbins. He says, quote, that we have a, quote, embarrassment of riches. Okay. And the interesting thing here, though, is he name checks Courtland Sutton. He name checks Pat Bryant. He talks about the great O-line. He doesn't mention some of the other wide receivers. So that's interesting. He also, and this is where I just think, I think the less talking you do in the off season, the better. Because he said that he's gonna be fresh, and he's gonna be pissed off because he's tired of the unfortunate stuff. I know that I can do it. It's gonna happen this year. It's gonna be great. I ain't gonna spill too much. I don't want to spill too many beans, but it's going to be great. That was those are the good Stewart. Thoughts on JK Dobbins making pronouncements that he's going to play a full season?
Well, you'd wonder though, then why didn't he do this stuff last year, or why didn't he do it the year before, or the year before that? Um, like JK Dobbins is an excellent running back, Colin. We've had, we've seen this movie before, and as Arsene Wenger famously said. Look, maybe he'll get lucky with his proclamation this year. Maybe this will be the year he will actually stay healthy. But does anybody really think that that's going to be the case? Absolutely not. No, because all the evidence in front of you would suggest that J.K. Dobbins is going to get injured. Now, hopefully, without sounding like an asshole, but maybe it'd be better if J.K. Dobbins gets injured early in the season, and then we have him towards the latter part of it and into the playoffs. What was also interesting, I didn't actually read the article, but I did see the headline. I saw a bit of the article. Was J.K. Dobbins also said that he could have played in the AFC Championship game, but the great organization that is the Denver Broncos looked after him as a person and not just a player, and they effectively sat him. Is what this article has said. So I think, as a human, you must go, that is a positive thing, that you're effectively stopping the player from putting himself in harm's way. But Dobbins said that the testing and the numbers that he was looking for were coming back positive. And yet the team decided not to play him in the AFC Championship game. So something isn't adding up. I think, like, apparently JK is a great guy in the locker room. Apparently JK is a really personable player to interview, and you can see in the press conference and stuff that he's a good, upbeat, bubbly character. But there's something not quite right about what he's saying and what actually happened, because if that's the case, then the Broncos really should have played him in the AFC Championship game. Because, look, as much as it probably would have been a frustrating night watching Jared Stidham get his ass handed to him by the Seattle Seahawks defensive line, at least if Dobbins was there, we would have made it to the Super Bowl. And there is something to be said for that. There's always going to be an asterisk beside this season from a Denver Broncos point of view because Bo Nix got hurt. But, you certainly would have, Stidham would have had a much easier job calling in the AFC Championship game if J.K. Dobbins had been fit. And let's not forget that J.K. Dobbins had been telling anybody who'd listened that he was nearly back. He was nearly back. Seemed to be saying that from about week 15 onwards. So, look, I hope J.K. Dobbins is right. I hope this is the season that he does manage to stay injury-free and play a full sort of complement of games in the NFL. But I also hope the Broncos draft a running back in either rounds 2 or rounds 4. And I hope he's a big, bruising, strong back that is a better version of Estimate, because I think that's exactly what we need. Because we need to give ourselves some insurance policy. It would be utter madness, and I think he's right. I think there are an awful lot of good players on that roster. I think the Broncos roster is genuinely one of the strongest in the NFL, and we are it's absolutely amongst the favourites when it comes to winning the Super Bowl at the moment. But if we go into the season with the running back room constituted exactly the same as it was last year, minus Jaleel McLaughlin, then that is absolute lunacy. I don't think it is. I do think the Broncos are going to draft a running back. It's just a question of where they draft them. I'm not sure that they will draft one in round 2 unless somebody like Jadarian Price from Notre Dame drops that far, which I don't see happening. So I think it's more likely that the Broncos are probably going to draft either a tight end or an inside linebacker in round 2. If they draft a cornerback or a guard in round 2, I think, people will hear my screams, even if they haven't downloaded the podcast that week. But I do expect them to do that, and I think they'd probably be more likely that round 4, or maybe we could sort of package the 2 round 4 picks and get into the sort of the lower end of round 3. But I just, then again, Colin, this off season has told me not to really ever take anything for granted. I'm expecting the Broncos to put an insurance policy in place in regards to the running back room, but would it surprise me hugely if we did nothing? No, not really. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And that kind of worries me because it is by far and away much more so than linebacker. And I think more so than tight end, because there is an outside chance that, I think there's too much being put onto this, but there is an outside chance that Davis Webb may open up the playbook a bit better and get the tight ends more involved, particularly Evan Ingram. But there's nothing that Davis Webb or anybody else can do that's going to make JK Dobbins suddenly not injury prone. And he seems to bristle at the suggestion that he's injury prone, to which, you'd have to say, well, don't get injured all the time then.
I find those comments, Stuart, that he could have played baffling. Like he kept saying that he was going to, there was the sooner comments. There was, as you said, like he kept saying, but it, the Broncos may be a wonderful organization, but the reality is, if you're on the verge of a Super Bowl, right? And they didn't know him anything. Like, this is not like your superstar QB, right? Who you're hoping is going to be your franchise guy for the next 15 years, and you decide we just can't risk it. They didn't owe JK Dobbins any money, right? And I can believe that the Broncos are a better team and a better run team than many of the franchises in the NFL. I don't think that is particularly difficult. But if he was good to go, there is no way they would have sat him. I think that is one where he is maybe he believes it, and the quote kind of indicates that. But I don't think they, if he really was, they'd have put him out there. There's no reason to hold him back. So he may have felt he was hitting the numbers, but clearly there was something. And will we ever get clarity on that? We probably never will, and it will become one of those kind of great stories of yore about how JK Dobbins could have played, if only. But I am skeptical.
The only way we'll ever get clarity as to what happened, Colin, is if JK Dobbins and Sean Payton have a massive falling out. And Sean starts to sort of throw barbs at him in the press, and JK responds in kind. That's the only way we'll ever get to the bottom of what actually happened in the AFC Championship game and JK Dobbins' health.
There is that. I do have some good news in that. One Michael Kliss, he known to this parish, who is very friendly with the Broncos. He expects that the running back room is what he said is he expects it to be made up of JK Harvey and a guy they draft. So that was what he said. Now, look, who knows? But that is like it's very difficult for me to believe that they run it back. That Sean Payton is that attached to Jaleel McLaughlin and the Hobbits. But as you said, he is a stubborn old goat. So who knows? We will see. We will see. The draft isn't actually all that far away at this point. I think that's probably it for this week. But Stuart and I will be back next week when hopefully it feels a little bit more like spring. The clocks will have sprung forward. I know they did in the States many weeks ago at this point, but only happening over here at the weekend. You can find Stuart over on Blue Sky SRoach123. I'm across social media at Colin from Cork. If you enjoy the podcast, please do rate, review, subscribe, or better yet, just tell a friend about us. All that remains to be said at this point is go Broncos.
Go Broncos.